And then we'll move to our showcase. Our showcase tonight is typically a 20-minute presentation and 10-minute questions before we go to open mic. And our colleague and GAI analyst down under, Adam, take it away, please.
Good morning from Melbourne, 9 a.m. here, and good afternoon to everyone over in the US. Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I love these. As you know, I've been a longtime participant and just love AI, love to be able to share this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I want to talk today about how we can use ChatGPT and specifically the custom ChatGPTs that you can build to assist, augment, and automate workflow. And in this case, the use case being my good work that I do with the team here at GAI Insights. So I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land from which I present to you today. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and I recognize their continuing connection to the land, waters, and culture. As Paul presented at the beginning of the Learning Lab today, we do a daily briefing Monday to Friday, so hopefully most of you are at least aware of that and tuned into the fact that that's happening, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, where we rate top news, essential, important, or optional. And out of that, at the end of it, our analyst Ankaj puts up a slide with the summary of the day's activities, and it talks about the news items that we reviewed as long as they're ratings. And then an email comes out once a day. There's the QR code. If you grab your phone right now and bring up that page, you can sign up and subscribe to get those emails. We're trying to get everyone across those because it's one of the great ways that we have to actually be able to extend the value of these great insights that the team is bringing to the analysis. And you'll also see there that along with the rating and the link, we provide the rationale. So we put a little summary of the discussion and let people know, well, why did we think this was important? Or as Paul calls it, why is this a nothing burger, right? And something that the busy AI executive doesn't need to spend their time on. So this is cool. It's amazing. It's super valuable stuff, but it actually presented a problem, we realized, because the articles, the ratings, and the rationale effectively were lost and inaccessible. If you weren't on the email list or you signed up after the fact, there was no historical record. There was no other way to get all of this information. It was basically just buried away and lost, which is really tragic because we're providing a lot of great insight and valuable information. So the solution was, as Paul showed a little earlier now, the ratings page that we now have on the GAI Insights website. And so here's a screenshot of that, and you can see, so it shows the date of the articles, the rating, the title with a link, and that link is actually a hot link that will open in another browser, and then the rationale. Additionally, at the top, you can filter by ratings, so you can say, show me just essential news, and then in the search by keyword, you can put, for example, OpenAI, and just find the news that we found essential from OpenAI. But this page didn't build itself. I actually had the project from the team to build this page. Again, there's the QR code if you want to find that page and the URL there. It's just /ratings on the GAI Insights website. So that's a great way to get across this news. But as I said, that page didn't build itself. And so the robots actually helped me quite a bit on this task. And I thought this would be a great opportunity. They actually continue to help me ongoing, both with the building of the page originally to adding things like the filtering and ratings and the keywords, because although I'm a developer, I'm not a programmer and I'm not a coder. So I had the robots assist me with those sorts of things. And ongoing, I maintain this page. So every night, like last night for me, or this morning for all of you, the email came out with today's latest news. And I, within minutes, was able to get this page updated with a database within HubSpot, which is the tool we use. And so today's all about really sharing how I leverage the robots in ChatGPT. I'll talk through a little bit what I do, and then we'll get into a screen share, and I'll actually show you how it works. So really, the idea is that the robots can assist us, they can augment our tasks, and then ultimately they can automate our tasks. And this is an evolution, right? It starts out, I said, hey, help me figure out how to write this code. And then I said, hey, actually, you know what? Can you take all this stuff? Can you put it in a CSV? And can you help me get all the information I need to put into this database so that I don't have to do it manually, even if you're assisting me and giving me some of the information? And then lastly, which I just actually have started to learn how to stitch together, is using custom actions within ChatGPT to have it automate the task. So now ChatGPT is writing the information. So we're going to look at three things today: how it can assist us, like it did with helping to build the website. And then we'll look at a couple of GPTs I built, one which augments, and it's called the Data Prep Assist Bot. And then because it's still a work in progress, the one that actually automates it, I've just called Beta Prep Assist Bot, because it was basically an extension of the augmentation to start automating some of that functionality. In terms of how GPTs can assist us I used it to help both rate the news as well as build the ratings page. And one of the GPTs we use, I'd like you to introduce you to, as I call her Eminence Echo. And Echo is a GPT I've created, and I can copy paste news articles into this bot, and it will come back with an analysis and a sentiment and give her opinion of the rating and the rationale. I don't rely on her to make the decisions for me, but sometimes if I'm on the fence, or if it's a really long article and I just want a summary, I'll ask Echo to help me. And that's a great example of a GPT that can assist with some of the work I'm trying to get done here with the team. The other one I want to introduce you to is called the Grimoire. And the Grimoire is a coding wizard. If you go to the GPT store, which you see in the top left there, and you go under programming, Grimoire is number 3 on that list at the moment. It's already been used over 1 million times to help people with their coding tasks. And I'm going to share a little more about how I used Grimoire through the process of developing and improving that ratings page that you saw earlier. So here's an example of a screenshot from part of my chat with Grimoire. This was after the page had already been developed and it was starting to perform slowly. And I literally said, here's my code, the page loads slowly. How can we make a better user experience? And then I copy pasted all of the HTML just right into the chat there. And Grimoire came back and said, well, look, to improve the performance, we can optimize several parts. We can do server-side sorting. We can do pagination. We can make more efficient JavaScript. Here's the updated code. Now, I'd be lying if I said everything worked perfectly first time out of the gates, but someone on the chat was mentioning Devin before. This is the worst these assistants are ever going to be, and they're going to continue to improve. Additionally, when I wanted to add that search by keyword feature to the page, I just said, look, here's my code. I don't think I have this functionality. And it said, here's the updated code. So it's pretty extraordinary. And that's a great example of how these custom chat GPTs can really assist you with the tasks you're trying to get done. With that, we'll move on to augmentation. I'll just pause for a second, Paul, if anyone has their hand up, if there's any questions at this point.
No questions in chat or hands up, but does anyone have a question they want to?
And I'll do screen shares and get to some of this stuff later on. Not so much about the assist, but the augment and the automate for sure.
Hey, it's Tim Andrews. Adam, can I ask a quick question? So I've used this too, and it's really quite extraordinary. The one thing that I've read is that the code may not be so secure. Do you worry about that? And if so, do you do anything about it?
You mean the code it gives me in terms of the best practice and the security around it? No, because the type of stuff I'm doing, I'm not writing anything that's proprietary or cutting edge. Nor at this point do I have any security concerns about, for example, people seeing what's in the database. I mean, the whole point of this task was to present that data. But it is a good point, and it's a good cautionary consideration for people who are professional software developers or are looking at best practice around leveraging these tools.
Yeah, my guess is there are going to be pipelines that start just like DevOps pipelines to integrate security checks and things like that. I was just wondering, I haven't used this in a while. I'm wondering if they've gotten there that fast yet, but apparently not yet. But I believe they will.
Yeah, agreed.
Adam, there's a Michael Novak, or a frequent guest on our daily show, has a few questions. How much time did it take you to put this together? Just weeks? Is it days? A few minutes?
I'd say everything was on the order of days. Yeah, for sure. And that's I mean, it's minutes, if not hours, to build it, but then to refine it and get everything working properly and to continue to tune it. Yeah, it ends up being days, not weeks, for sure.
And his other question was on skill set. What skill set, if someone wanted to do similar thing, is it? pure programming, or you talk about programming, not a developer? What?
Oh, so I'm a developer, not a programmer. Exactly. I understand logic. I understand the basics of looking at code. Like I can see HTML and I can see that, like, for example, on the screen there, you see the word title and then you see the slash in title. I know that that means the thing in between those two tags is a title. But if someone said, "Hey, can you write me some code?" I wouldn't I wouldn't know where to start. So that's sort of the level I'm at.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good questions. Keep them coming. I'll now shift gears a little bit and I'll talk about how I augment my tasks ongoing. And so this is this little graphic showing the robot handing me the data that I need to, that's been packaged and prepared and ready to upload into that HubSpot database. And really, I figured it was best to actually walk through a bit of a logic flow here and explain how the process works. So I'm going to grab my cool little laser pointer. So I get these emails from Paul every day, and I copy paste that information into my chatbot. It then extracts the ratings, the rationale, the titles. But for the HubSpot database, it doesn't just need the title; it needs to be a link, and it needs that. I want that link to open in a new window. So then it actually generates the HTML for those titles with the tags and all those different things. It'll clean up the titles. Oftentimes they will have, like, the URL will have question mark UTM source, you know, and a bunch of sort of reference stuff in terms of like the breadcrumbs of where it was from and which social campaign and those sorts of things. It'll compile it all into a CSV file, gives me that CSV file, which I then import into HubSpot, our database tool. Well, it's what we do our whole website on. And then I can publish those updates to the live site, right? And over here on the left, you'll see a little bit of the instruction that I have in the background of how this GPT actually works. So I give it a role and a goal. It's kind of like prompt engineering, really, but you set the whole thing up. So I said, this GPT is designed to assist users in preparing articles for upload. You're going to use the following steps. You extract the data. You know, I went through step 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I actually go into the detailed instructions for step 1, step 2, etc. And this took a bunch of refining, but it actually works fairly well now. And we'll take a closer look. I'll actually bring up a screen share in a few minutes and show you that in action.
Adam, you mind just going back to that? I just want to highlight how literal this is. I mean, this feels like instructions you would literally tell an intern or someone in your office, right? Go do this, and you're talking to the robot like a human. Is that the fair observation?
Yeah, absolutely. And the great example I hear over and over is when, and it's funny because it's the example they give to kids in school where they say, write the instructions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? And it's like, oh, well, you take the peanut butter out of the jar. Well, you didn't tell me to open the jar, you know? and it's a bit like that. You really have to go through and you have to tell it all of the things you want it to do. And I'd say a big part of prompt engineering is actually that iterative process of going back and forth and thinking it'll understand what you mean, but then testing it. And the way it misbehaves actually gives you insight into what you have to change. A really good trick I've actually found is particularly when I'm building these, I'll be working with it and I'll want it to do something and it'll do some other behavior. And I'll actually just write back to it and I'll say, I wanted you to do this. You did that. How can I change your instructions so that you'll do this next time and not misunderstand me? And it'll say, oh, well, if you had said this, I would have known what you wanted to do. And I'll be like, okay, great. You just told me what I need to write in my instructions. Yeah. But it is, I want to emphasize, it's an iterative process, right? You continue to work with it to interpret what you need. Yeah.
Adam, hover on that point. That to me is profound. You know, whereas I'm looking at Raymond Hunter and others, 30 years of software, when there was a bug in the software, we could interrogate the code there and say, tell me how to fix this damn bug. Tell me what instructions were wrong. And we're actually doing it with this. It's breathtaking.
Yeah, and it's super powerful to rely on it to explain because clearly it misinterpreted it. It understood one thing and you wanted something else. So it can then say, oh, well, you said this, which is why I did that. If you wanted me to do this instead, say this. Okay, thank you very much. I'll do that next time. Right. So what I've just started doing recently is really taking that augmentation to the next level and automating part of the task. And again, this isn't a one and done sort of thing. You can further automate, and you can automate parts of a workflow, as Paul, you and John with David DeLallo published, right? In terms of the was it Design for Dialogue? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is really about how can you modify a process to either have the robot involved or to have it completely taking on a task. But it doesn't mean you have to, boil the ocean. You don't have to necessarily automate everything. You can have parts of the pipeline that can be automated, and you don't have to necessarily build the entire thing at once. And I'll talk about what I've done there. So this is, as I mentioned, called Beta Prep Assist Bot. And now within those custom instructions that I've given to the GPT, I've added an action. And actions are actually the place where you can start getting these things to automate some of your tasks. So I had to give it an API key. I had to give it an open API schema. But you'll see even at the bottom of that API schema, it says server URL api.hubapi.com. So I've now configured this thing on the back end so that it can talk directly to the HubSpot database on my behalf. So it doesn't have to give me a CSV file, which I download, and then I have to go over to HubSpot and upload. It actually is now just writing the articles into the HubSpot database directly. And that's really where these things, especially as we get what we call agentic systems, and these things doing more and more tasks on our behalf, start to become really powerful. And you can see that even in terms of the workflow here, how much more refined it is. So I'm still doing the extraction from the email, right? That's not automated. I get Paul's email, I copy paste it in. It does the conversion of the HTML, but then it actually prepares JSON, which is structured text in the format that can then be passed and ingested by the database. And then it just goes off and does it.
Adam?
Right? It just posts the articles. Yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting. David Eddy makes the point. He says, look, writing useful specifications is really hard. Coding's much easier. I think you're saying something a little different, but what's your reaction?
Say that again. Writing
useful specifications is really, all caps, hard. Coding is child's play in comparison, says David Eddy.
If I'm taking his meaning correctly, I'd agree. And more what we're finding is that, especially someone mentioned Devin before, these things are only as good as the details about what it is they're working with. So it will need to know what the code is supposed to do and how it's supposed to function, and then it can write it for you. But if users, like, if people have something out on GitHub and it's not documented, and then there are no comments in the code, the robots are going to have a much harder time interpreting what they can do with it, rather than just writing the code itself.
The other impression I have too, from what you say, Adam, is that having a dialogue in something close to English, then translating into the code and being able to go back and forth and ask it a question just the way you said, what did I get wrong? I was looking for this outcome, this behavior. You did this. That to me is a level of capability that, debuggers rarely had, if ever, in that way. Right. But I'm not a software developer, so anybody feel free to.
No, John, I think you're exactly right. And so much traditional software is problem identification, problem resolution is in the realm of humans, not the software coding. And this is moving it down, which is, it's profound. I mean, that's what we had, unit tests and, thousands of different handwritten, or automated QA tests.
It's great. It's great because writing is thinking. And in fact, when we were working on education with Alan Kay and Marvin Minsky and Seymour Papert, one of the things Minsky always said, he's the founder of the AI lab at MIT, was, does the computer program the kid or the kid program the computer? And what he was saying, just like we were talking about peanut butter and jelly, to actually write an algorithm is writing. You have to think about it. And as David Eddy was saying, I completely agree. Actually, spitting out the code is trivial. Writing down clear thoughts is very difficult, as most writers know, whether it's code or something else. I will say that means that the software is going to get worse, probably not better, because you can write very clearly what the software wants to do. If the software itself can't explain what it's doing, which is a real problem right now, then you still have all sorts of issues. That's the only downside to this. It's as David said again. David made a great point, which I've made a million times, which is people who use Excel don't think they're programming. Of course, they're programmers. They're just sloppy programmers, and this is why Excel is a disaster. So it's great, but there's a lot of really bad Excel out there, and it creates all sorts of problems for people, because when there's a bug in a really complicated Excel spreadsheet, it's really hard to find. So that will be an issue, and there's some effort that needs to be put in, I think, into making the software able to explain itself as well as the robots can. But this is a big plus in terms of clarity of what you actually want the program to do. So I'm in favor to see their secondary.
I want to make sure I have time to actually demo this thing.
Sorry.
But at the end here, Paul, I know we're bleeding into Q&A time, but we're already doing the Q&A, so hopefully I can plead another 5 minutes from the court.
Actually, before you, Adam, David, Eddie, you had your hand up and took it down. You want to jump in here quickly, David?
Yeah, it's thank you, Tim. Thank you, John. Yeah, I've been appalled for 50 years. I've been appalled at the basic attitude of, oh, we'll just throw it over the transom and IT will figure it out. And I can't tell. And then you complain about IT can't deliver the solution to a problem that hasn't been defined. Now, I haven't seen this improve in 50 years, much. I mean, and the software is just immensely more complex. The fact that I can carry a supercomputer in my pocket, and it works. But anyway, so it's interesting. I mean, so anyway, thank you. I appreciate the. I mean, AI is not. I mean, this is a 70-year-old discipline. That's 7 decades, and it's still stuck on the issue of machine translation.
Right. Thank you, David. Go ahead, Adam. Take us home.
Yeah, thanks. Along those lines, actually, in that edit actions window, at the bottom of it is a link to a GPT that OpenAI has written that can help you write those Open API schemas. And you tell it, oh, I want to talk to HubSpot, and it'll give you that code for the HubSpot HubDB API. So even they are leveraging the robots to help you leverage the robots, which is pretty amazing. So look, thank you. I do want to do a quick demo. That QR code, as well as the easy URL, will take you to a link that has all of my socials. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. And I am definitely happy to help anyone I can build similar sorts of tools and start automating tasks. Let's jump over. So this is actually a demo email. You see, it's June 4th. This is one I sent myself. It's an example of the daily email we get from Paul, which is the Gen AI news briefing. In this case, we had one essential article, which is about my business and how awesome it is. And then one really optional one, which is that Google can search for things. So I also, as you can see, here's the pages, and notice the UTM source and all of that stuff that often comes on a link, right? That stuff's part of what I do is my robot will filter that out. So I just copy the bulk of that email, and then I jump over to my assist bot. When we get into the beta one, I'll actually do verbose mode so that you can see everything it's doing. But in this case, I'll just go through the workflow. So I just paste in the email I get from Paul. And it'll come right back and it says, here's the articles. Please provide the URLs in the correct order. I could go copy and paste them. I actually have them here already, though, ready to go. So I put in the URLs. And then it goes, you can see, and it makes those correct HTML titles out of them. It'll build the CSV file. That's what it's actually doing now. And then it gives me this CSV for the correct date, which I can then just download. That's now in my downloaded files. I go over to the HubSpot database. Here we see, like, this is actually the live data, and I'll just delete the demo records later. But this is just today's news, which I already uploaded into there. And I would go to Action, Import, select that I want to add a CSV file, right? And this was actually a very streamlined process. I'd have to make sure it was UTF-8, say next, match the fields, and then hit import. And then these new records would get updated into that database. And within about a minute, we could see that data live, right? I'm not actually going to do that yet because I'm going to show you the way the robot can do it for me. So similar process, but again, so we copy this email, except now we go over to my beta prep assist bot, which adds the articles to HubSpot automatically. In this case, I'm going to use the verbose mode so that we can see everything it's doing. But in the same way, I can have it do everything in the background, so I don't need to worry about it. And so there's an example of the email format, and I'm just going to paste the whole email from Paul in. And so here it is. It's extracted the first one, which is essential, and the rationale. The second one, and said, make sure this is correct, and then provide the URLs for the next step. So far, the process is the same. And this is really about how you can just automate part of the process. So then it goes through and it generates the HTML formatted titles. And we'll just say, yep, that's correct. They're formatted. So now it's going to prepare the data for posting. One of the things is when it's sending it through the backend, it actually needs what's called Unix epoch time. So you can see the dates have been changed from 4th of June to this big old funny number, right? And that's just so that the database knows exactly what we want. And again, we can say, yes, when I do this automatically, I don't have to hit anything. I literally just paste the links and then it goes ahead and updates it. And then you just saw it said starting an action, and it said it wants to talk to api.hubapi.com. Anytime you fire off an action, because OpenAI wants to make sure that people aren't accidentally sending information places they don't want to, that's the place where it requires confirmation. It says, you're about to connect to another site through an API, or is this something you want to do? If I just say confirm, you'll see it talked to the API, it talked to the API, and talked to the API. And what this is actually doing is it posted 2 articles, it actually wrote to the database, and it published that. So if we go back over, I'll just show you really quickly in the edit GPT here. You see, here's all those custom instructions I was talking about how it's going to behave. And then at the bottom of the page here is this action section. And this is that thing that actually does the work, the API key, the schema for the JSON, and then the actions that I'm using, which is to add a row to the Hub database and then publish to the Hub database. And if we go back over now to HubSpot, and I just filter these by date again, you'll see there's now these 2 June 4th articles that have been written to the database. The essential one about AppMan Academy and the optional one about Google. And if we go over to the GAI Insights, and this is live on the web page right now, and I refresh the page, it hasn't actually shown up yet. It takes it a minute to refresh. I'll use that just for a second here to show you. So say what I was talking about before. So if we filter for OpenAI articles that are essential, you can get that information. It just takes it a minute to propagate to production once it's in the database. Let's go ahead and refresh the page again. This is always the risk with live demos, and there you see it. So those June 4th articles are now live on the website, and I didn't have to take that CSV and download it and move it and publish it and everything like that. So that's really the promise of how these robots can start to begin to automate tasks and assist, augment, and automate what it is we're trying to do with ChatGPT.
Fantastic, Adam. How about some questions for Adam?
I just want to say this is terrific, Adam. And I think this is a great example of, people want automation and they worry about productivity enhancement and things like that. But this is what I've been saying for a long time. Adam, you would never have, this is not an option for like improving your productivity programming because you're not a programmer, right? And I feel the same way. I was a programmer for a long time, and I could be a programmer again if I wanted, but it would take a long time. And I'm so offended by HTML, but that's another story. But the point is, we can be programmers now. That's not like we're better programmers. It's like we're programmers, and we couldn't have been programmers otherwise. I think that is what people don't recognize, is the amount of opportunity this opens up. Right now, I think you have to be a little bit like us. You have to kind of know your way around it enough to feel comfortable to challenge it. But I think it's amazing that what you can get done, and this is a great example of it.
You probably
So what I'm
wouldn't even have
sharing here
considered.
is when you wanted to make one of those actions, there's this link I was mentioning, get help from Action GPT. And so just as an example, I said to Action GPT, I want to write data to a Google Sheet. And it gives me the YAML Open API schema of how I have to do that exactly, to your point, Tim, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it would have taken me a week to figure out how to write this thing.
Yeah.
And then it
as a
gives me an
result, the key
explainer,
is, as
and
a
it says
result,
what
you would
information
probably-
I need to provide and where I have to go get it. And I can just
Right.
follow the steps. Yeah.
Right. And the key is, as a result, you probably just wouldn't have done it. At the
Yeah,
end
exactly.
of the day, you just
Exactly.
would not
There's
have.
no way.
Right. So I think one more step, it's hard to say exactly how much. So this is already good enough that old programmers can resume their former lives, if you will. And it's getting, I think, one more step. It will be like the marketing executive doesn't have to ask a Tableau programmer to generate a visualization. That's when it really opens up, I think. But we'll see how long it takes to get there. But it's already opened up enormously. And this is, and yes, it makes programmers better, but it makes a whole lot of people who just weren't going to program be suddenly able to program.
Yeah, and just to close the circle on computability, you can see how this, really increases the ability to extend computability of different tasks.
Right.
And the thing is that, just to how quickly this is going to happen, I believe that, private, I don't know how many you've been following, but private equity owns a lot of the economy, like a bunch of it, like maybe a quarter of it or something like that. They are going to take this stuff and they are going to ram it through the organizations that they own, whether they do it internally or hire folks on the outside. Knowledge workers and labor productivity is just going to go through the roof with this stuff. And I mean, that's going to be the sharp edge of the wedge. Other people will do innovative and cool new stuff, but just a straight ripping costs out is going to happen quickly.
Fantastic. I want to make a couple points. One, I think we all should be really fortunate to have someone of Adam in our learning group. So Adam is a super autodidactic seeker on this stuff. So when the ChatGPT came out, Adam, as you know, he did the first 100 days of ChatGPT. He's always been out there. Second, he's been very, very collaborative and generous. So thank you for doing that and modeling that. And third, Adam, I think you're doing something I continue to see is really important is you're getting your hands into the mud. You're learning through the mud. And I think this over intellectualizing all this stuff you have to get in the mud to understand and be able to see all the new opportunities you see. And I think you're exemplifying that. And the fourth thing I want to highlight is the labor productivity is just stunning. So we've already seen 20 people in Midjourney do $200 million a year in their business. We're watching a dinky little company called GAI Insights daily have a call that's broadcast around the world live and recorded with less than 2 minutes using something called StreamYard that internally Adam going through, he just showed us having it up and put up into an email that goes to, a couple thousand people every day. It's just breathtaking, the efficiency tools we're seeing right in front of us. Everyone, Adam, fabulous job. So thank you, Adam. Really, really.
You're welcome.
Thank you for modeling contributions back to this learning group.